I sank onto the exam table's rolling stool in Bay 4, peeled off my gloves, and realized I'd just spent 11 minutes taking vitals on a man who didn't need vitals taken twice. My name is Dawn Okafor, and I've been a paramedic with Cedar Fork EMS for 6 years, which is long enough to know every trick a patient can pull to keep you standing in the room a little longer. Marcus Vale, 41 years old, had chest tightness that resolved the second I walked in, a blood pressure sitting pretty at 118/76, and eyes that kept finding mine like he was checking whether I'd noticed. "You called us for this?" I said, snapping my kit shut. "I called because it felt real at the time," he said. "It's better now. Might be the company." I'd heard that line, or some version of it, probably 40 times a year. Usually from someone twice his age with a lot more time on his hands and a lot less sense. But something about the way he said it, quiet, almost surprised at himself, made it land different. "Sign here," I told him, holding out the refusal-of-transport form, because that's where it should have ended. Most calls like that end with a signature and a door closing. This one didn't. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the produce aisle of the Kroger off Route 9, arguing with a mesh bag of oranges when I heard, "You're the one who wouldn't let me flirt my way into an ambulance ride." I turned around, and there he was, in a flannel that had clearly been washed too many times, holding a rotisserie chicken like it was evidence in a trial. Marcus Vale. Off the clock, off the stretcher, and looking a lot less like a man having a cardiac event, and a lot more like someone I wouldn't have minded talking to for longer than 11 minutes. "I let you sign a form," I said. "That's different from letting you do anything." "Fair." He set the chicken in his cart. For what it's worth, I wasn't faking the tightness. I was faking how long it took to feel better. I laughed before I could stop myself, and that was the problem, really. I'm not supposed to laugh at patients, current or former, not in a way that means anything. Cedar Fork's policy is about active patients, people currently under our care, and Marcus wasn't that anymore, hadn't been since the moment his signature dried on that clipboard. Still, some old habit in me kept a wall up out of instinct, the kind you build after watching a coworker's life get complicated by blurring exactly this line. We ended up in the checkout line together anyway, not on purpose, or that's what I told myself. He asked what a person does after a 12-hour shift besides argue with citrus. I told him mostly sleep, sometimes badly, and that I ran to shake the calls loose from my head when sleep didn't work. He said he ran too, badly, along the greenway behind the middle school, and if I ever wanted company, that wouldn't slow me down. "You don't know my pace," I said. "I know you walked a stretcher out to my driveway without breaking a sweat while I was theoretically dying. I'll take my chances." I gave him my number. I want to be honest about that, because it would be easy to make it sound like he talked me into something, and he didn't. I wrote it on the back of his receipt between the chicken and a 2-for-1 on canned beans, and I drove home wondering what exactly I thought I was doing, getting warm over a guy I'd met with a blood pressure cuff. The running turned into coffee. The coffee turned into him showing up at the station with a box of kolaches for the whole crew, which earned him a standing ovation from my partner Reyes and a raised eyebrow from our supervisor, Captain Whitfield, who pulled me aside not unkindly and asked if there was anything she should know. "He's not a patient," I said. "Hasn't been in over a month. Nothing's active." "I know the rule," she said. "I'm asking if you're being careful with yourself, not the paperwork." That question sat with me longer than I wanted it to. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about this job. You meet people on the worst 10 minutes of their lives, scared and stripped down to something honest, and it's easy to mistake that honesty for connection. I'd seen it happen to a colleague once. A fling with someone she'd treated for an overdose, still shaky, still sorting himself out, and it ended in a way that cost her more than it cost him. I never wanted to be her cautionary tale. So I watched myself with Marcus the way I'd watch a rhythm strip, waiting to see if this was a real signal or just noise that looked like one. It kept looking real. He wasn't fragile, wasn't leaning on me for anything except maybe better banter than his job as a high school shop teacher generally afforded him. He asked good questions about my work and then, more importantly, stopped asking when he saw my jaw tighten, understanding there were calls I wasn't going to describe over dinner. He remembered that Reyes took his coffee black and that I didn't. Small things that told me he was actually listening, not performing. The turn came on a Tuesday in October, on a call that had nothing to do with him at all. Multi-vehicle wreck on the interstate, and among the walking wounded was a teenager, maybe 16, who kept asking for his shop teacher because the man had apparently taught him to change a tire the week before, and he was convinced, in his concussed haze, that Mr. Vale needed to know he'd done it right at the scene. It took me a second to place the name. When I called Marcus later that night, more shaken than I wanted to admit, he didn't make it about himself, didn't ask why I was telling him. He just listened, and at the end he said, "You carry a lot of other people's worst days. Who carries yours?" Nobody had asked me that in a long time. I sat in my car outside my own apartment for 10 minutes before I could answer him, and when I finally said, "I don't know, maybe nobody," it didn't feel like a confession so much as a door swinging open that I'd forgotten I could open. I want to tell you the rest was easy, but it wasn't, not entirely. There was a stretch in December where I pulled back, scared of exactly the thing Whitfield had asked about. Was I building something real, or was I just tired and reaching for the nearest warm hand? I canceled on him twice. The second time he didn't push, just said, "Whenever you're sure. I'm not going anywhere fast," and that patience, more than any kolache or any run along the greenway, was what finally convinced me. Somebody who wanted to rush me toward something would have made the second cancellation a fight. He made it a Tuesday. I called him back that Friday and told him the truth, that I was scared of confusing gratitude for love or adrenaline for connection because I'd watched it wreck someone I cared about. He said maybe the fact that I was scared of getting it wrong was proof I wasn't the type to get it wrong. I still think about that. We're a year and some months in now, and last week he stood in my kitchen while I decompressed after a bad call, a cardiac arrest we couldn't bring back, the kind that follows you home. And he didn't try to fix it or talk me out of feeling it. He just made 2 plates of eggs at 11 at night and sat across from me until I was ready to talk. And when I finally did, he listened the way he had that first October night, no performance in it at all. I think about Bay 4 sometimes, that 11 minutes I spent taking vitals I didn't need, and I wonder how many of us have missed something because we were so busy following the form in front of us that we didn't notice the person handing it back. I don't know if there's a right answer for when to let your guard down at work and when to keep it up. I've seen both choices go wrong for people I love. But I know that some signals aren't noise, no matter how much training tells you to double check them. And I know that the oranges I almost didn't buy that day are still the best thing I've picked up in a grocery store in my whole life.